Hey, it's Crumbs. You're lost? How do you not know where you are? It's Thorin's channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Elitists United with me and Veteran here. And our guests are Kaiser and Orome. So, new school players to the LEC, trying to prove that their teams are actually good. Debatable, but maybe we'll discuss that on today's show. I have a question for you, actually, Veteran. I watched that video you made where you were like reviewing people's op.gg or whatever and giving like comments and stuff, right? And a little clip played. Are you actually so petty that the sound, like the cue that plays when someone subscribes is like Loco Doco flaming you or something? Is that what it actually is?
No, so Loco Doco flaming me comes up for donation. The subscribe one is when K's said that like I sent my whole army at him.
Right. Okay.
In one of the Listen Locos. But the donation sound is Loco Doco saying that he can't stand another Listen Loco with Veteran talking about how great Europe is and all that. So
that's at least funny then. It's not just because it's Loco Doco. It's actually because he did say hilarious.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
They're both references to me. Direct references.
Okay. Right. So here's my main question for you, Veteran, is I'm just going to be straight up. Let's put all in English. We have an idiom called "put all the cards on the table," so everyone can see what everyone's working with here. So I'm going to tell you straight up, right, Kaiser. Sometimes Veteran does actually big you up and say you're a good player and stuff, mainly because it's a way to also then explain why Kazi's so good, who's his new fucking favorite ADC. But Orome, I'm going to tell you straight up, mate. Usually not that much praise coming your way. You're like the last name he mentions on the team. So we're just going to let everyone know at the beginning, because let's talk a bit about these guys and their team. So we'll start with the beloved Kaiser. Apparently he's the favoured child on this episode, Veteran. So give me some thoughts. Why were you hyping him coming into the season?
So there were very few supports outside of LEC that you could kind of call the full package. Steelback was the most obvious one of them. Kaiser was the other one. The knowledge that most people had when it came to Mousesport, which was a team that he was on, and how like the shot calling was working in, most people would say it was Shadow plus Kaiser. The thing about Kaiser, though, is that Kaiser had very good map control in mid to late game scenarios, but he was doing it with, and you're probably going to try to defend him, but he was doing it with a fucking dog AD carry who was incredibly overrated. And I always said that Conjo was actually more like an illusion created by how good both Kaiser and Shadow were. The kind of composition they had to play on bot lane was stuff like Swain Tarek. He became like a Janna main at one point. Like there were a ton of things that Kaiser played. That
what the fuck? He played Janna in season 9.
They played a lot of disengaged camps on bot. They played a lot of disengaged.
I don't think Janna's been like global meta since like season 4 or something. What the fuck?
You have to understand everything Conjo was really good at was an AP based champion, and they played very heavy disengage on bot side, and then they always played a very heavy priority top. And because they had priority top, they could always execute a lane swap scenario for Herald where they were always ahead on the Herald buff. And because of that, if Kaiser and Shadow set it up right, they basically always got a favorable team fight and exploded the game like that. Previously, though, Kaiser being really well known for like Alistair, Shen, Rakan, he was still very well known for even with Conjo, but he was very engage heavy. So the question everyone had was when he got paired with Kazi, are we going to see the more disengagey version of Kaiser, or are we going to see the guy that can go all in all the time like Labrov was? And we saw that Kaiser can still do the all-in all the time, and he also has exceptional taste in support champions, as shown by being the only Bard player so far in the LEC. Thank you for that, because Mickey keeps covering it and never fucking locking it.
Wait a minute, why do you like Bard at the moment? Why the fuck would you want that champ? Because it can roam?
Bard's insane right now. Like in a lot of people seem to believe that the current meta doesn't favor Bard, because if Bard mispositions versus a lot of these more burst heavy champs like Leona Nautilus, like you get one shot. But honestly, if you take Guardian with Bard, it's very easy to get lane priority into roam all the time, which is why people like me and LS advocate for either enchanters or mages in the bot lane. But Bard for me is like the full package in that extent. Like it was very obvious to me that he'd become one of these like super heavy priority supports. He actually just got his first nerf ever following, because his win rate just like skyrocketed.
Here's the thing though, Veteran. Listen, I definitely want to jump into this. I'm gonna put a pin in it. We're gonna come back and we're definitely gonna talk about Bard. But I will just say one thing to you. As you were giving all that praise to Kaiser there, now he's got true taste in champions. I'm just gonna give you one quick counter, Veteran. Are you ready? And this is gonna be a KO. He did play Bard twice last week. No, Brown, sorry. He did play Brown.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
don't you hate Brown? Don't you think it's the worst champ in the game?
I mean, well, I hate Braum. I hate Braum as a solo queue pick. I think Braum's actually decent in the meta right now. It's overrated. I mean, it's overrated in the meta. It just has a lot of good synergies with a lot of the AD carries. Like Aphelios is a very obvious one that he has very strong synergies with, right? For solo queue, which is the OPGG video you were watching, I think if you're playing Braum, then you are basically playing for excuses if you're in gold and expecting to count yourself out that way. Like, why would you do that when you can play Bard or Pyke and support or play another role? But in competitive, I can understand where you go to Braum. I'd suggest Fnatic tend more towards Braum, because if Hylissang's on anything else, he is going to go all in all the time. Okay. And if you're not playing that kind of composition, and Fnatic don't like playing that kind of composition anymore, it can look bad. Though I thought he looked very good versus G2.
Don't worry, like Hylissang always finds a way to go in with Braum as well.
Okay.
I don't think it changes with any champion.
Okay. So that's the support equivalent of back in the day, that story where the coach of Samsung White just made him play like fucking...
Yes.
What was the champion I'm thinking of? Cogmore, I think, just because if you play that, you can't just go balls deep all the time.
Yeah.
The position correct. Right, I see. It makes sense.
It's at least harder. Yeah, it's at least harder for you to rationalize going balls deep. And there was a period historically with Fnatic, I think it was Season 8, where they had a split where if they had Braum, they won every game on Braum. If they didn't have Braum, they lost every game. I feel like we're kind of tending back towards that. But if they're going to pick Braum, having picks like Bard, this suddenly becomes very, very, very strong. I even think right now you can do stuff like Lulu, and I'd expect Kaiser to be the kind of person to bring that out before other people do, given the things that he's already brought out. He's still very instrumental in the map play of Mad Lions right now, though the map play of Mad Lions gets incredibly questionable once any neutral objective appears on the map. But we'll get into that later on.
Right, come on, Kaiser, give us some thoughts here. Defend the Brown picks. Give us some thoughts on Bard, because why no one else played it?
I mean, I think Bard is pretty sleeper. With the new build of that Nemesis split, he can actually work even into stuff like Leona and Nautilus. You just have to have the right team comp. You have to play against the right champions. If you play against Syndra, Aphelios, I think Bard can actually work really well, because they're both immobile. If you ult them, they have to flash basically every time. So I think he's pretty sleeper. But I mean, a lot of people just don't play him, and they only play him into Braum or something because it's safe and they can't get punished. But I think it can, if you're good enough on that champion, then it can work against Nautilus as well.
Yeah, Nord Leona's all-in is obviously insanely punishing. So after the first two waves, you kind of want to just let them bounce back. But on Bard, you can do a ton of other things within those waves that it's bouncing back on, right? So long as you don't overextend on any of these pushes, you can definitely play it with minion advantage such that they can't all-in you. And you go Guardian Bard in competitive anyway. And I think you mentioned Deadman's Plate, but you're still going Athenes with Guardian Bard, right?
I think against SK, I went Deadman's into Athenes.
Okay.
You have to go Deadman's for sure, because as you just get one-shot every fight. If you go Athenes, it's too squishy. Sure. But yeah, after the Deadman's, you can just build whatever you want. You can even go Rapid Fire or something if you want damage.
Right, let's have a little discussion about Hylissang then, right? Because at the moment, the discussion most people have on Reddit is it's very limited. It's basically just haha, wow, he's hinting all the games. But then if he was doing the same shit last year, it was what a fucking genius. Look at all these players, best support in the world. So it's to me, there's no nuance to discussions. This is the question, right, Veteran? Obviously, you love it when support players roam a lot, make players on the map, don't just sit in lane 2v2 like the old school days. It's one of the reasons, actually, I think why now it looks like you probably overhyped Dreams a little bit, but I understand why you thought he was good last year. Yeah. He doesn't look as good in this team. But I get why. That's one of the things he was doing a lot. So in that scenario, right, what's different about the support role in that sense that makes what Hylissang's doing not good then? Because normally you like players who push the limits constantly, try to make players...
Yeah, sure. So to make the distinction, the key thing I think Hylissang does wrong is that in stuff for example, the first game that they play against G2, not this week's, where I will defend them to death. The first game...
Fnatic, you mean?
Yeah, the game against G2 that Fnatic played, the first game against G2 Fnatic played, not this week's, but the first one, when he was Nautilus with a Veigar Gangplank composition. That composition wants to play very heavily around zones of control. But what Hylissang will do is at the moment that they create that zone of control and they're kiting back, Hylissang will decide it's the best time to go all in, despite the fact that everything is basically down for their team, and then he'll die. When actually his role in that should be to sit on top of Veigar, sit on top of Gangplank, make sure that no engage happens, to be another form of zone control. But he never uses the threat of Nautilus to to zone people off and continue that. He always just looks to go in all the time, right? That's the thing that I have issue with him. That's nothing to do with his map play. His map play against G2 this week was basically the thing that made it look so one-sided right up until the probably very, very infamous Baron call that everyone will bring up all the time whenever they talk about that game now. But like G2 made one massive mistake of sending Ezreal Yuumi back bot lane once, and then Fnatic never ever let up on tempo off that. Like he executed a really strong swap into topside for Herald, kind of like what Kaiser always did on Mouse Sports, and they accelerated the game off of the tempo that they got from that Herald swap. Like they were miles ahead of G2's team at that point, and it showed for the rest of the game. And most of it was from map play decisions that Hylissang was making. So just because he did like an int decision later on in the game, where the game is basically already lost, and you'd expect someone to do coin flip decisions if they want to win at that point. Like that's the only thing that I saw people commenting on. But I didn't see anyone commenting on how heavily him and Selfmade control the map in the early phases and how much that contributed to Fnatic's solid lead.
I mean, like talking about Hylissang, I think a lot of people kind of discredit him for like a few games. Like he, of course, has like in games on Nautilus, but I think only. I mean, as like stupid as it sounds, like only Destiny plays him like well. I would say, like in LEC. So
he has to do something well, I guess.
No, but it's like I think that champion is just maybe a bit overrated as well. It's not the safest champion, so like players who always go aggressive like Hylissang, like they get punished for like one misstep, so it's like not the best champion for them. Like they like players like Hylissang, they kind of wanted a champion that is mobile, right? Like that can deboard and get out of sticky situations. So that's why he always looks better on Rakan, like Thresh or Pyke, right? Because like Thresh is not really a frontliner. He's like he can play backline as well. But I think like Hylissang in general is like just really, really good. Like he really understands where he needs to be on the map. Like I mean, of course, like against us, it was like a bit unlucky. He was like trolling a bit, but like usually, like in scrims in like good competitive games, like when he has a good day or something, then like he pressures like everywhere, and he's just super good in lane as well. Like he plays super aggressive, which like fits Fnatic like a glove, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, the problem is that the average viewer won't understand what Hylissang is doing on the map.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what they will see is that sometimes he dies and there's no one around him, and they're like, "Oh, Hylissang is inting again." But it's actually like most of the time he's not inting. He's just playing on the edge quite a lot, like getting deep wards for TP flanking. He does a lot of stuff like this, and he is in weird positions on the map sometimes because he wants to set up a flank for an objective. He will sometimes sit 30 seconds in a bush just waiting for a flank.
Or like even drawing pressure, like for example, what Fnatic always does is like they send Reckless in the side lane. Hylissang goes on like a solo mission or something, and then like when they try to catch him, like he stalls as long as possible. Reckless gets like 5 plays on top lane or something, and then like the game is basically over. So like sometimes it just looks
which
bad,
is totally worth if you add it up. Like if you add the death versus all the waves you get, of course that's worth it. Yeah.
And like sometimes it's just like the enemy like you don't have a cross map, so like Hylissang just dies for free, and then like you lose objectives, right? But that's kind of the trade-off with him. Like he makes a lot of good plays, but he also makes like a lot of bad plays, right?
I wouldn't say it's.
Like I mean, it's actually it's not a lot of bad plays.
He just makes very memorable bad plays, unfortunately. That like stick in your mind. That's
a better way to put it. Yeah.
Thing is, though, I actually do think he's a good example, Veteran, of a player where it's like, one of the things I tried to change in analysing the game over the years is instead of looking at the players individually, you should almost look at a concept I call role balance. Like, where is the better player? What's the player who plays with him? Like, how do they complement each other or contrast? Yeah. Well, I think he's a perfect example of that because, and especially last year when they had Broxer, like in the team they had back then, the only aggressive players was him and Whipple, that was it.
Yeah.
So as a result, you'd have had an entire team that wouldn't have tried to make plays, wouldn't have put pressure on the opponent. So actually, as an offset, I think he's actually well positioned within Fnatic in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, Fnatic's roster is actually really well built in general because of this. Like, they got rid of the only big gaping hole they had, which was that eventually Broxer would be abused. The fact that he doesn't actually jungle path efficiently at all would be abused. And now it's more like they actually have a jungle support rather than
if you look at it now,
support.
They would have. I think they actually would have been legit bad if they'd have had the same lineup as last year. This year,
I think so.
In this meta right now, I think they would be like the 6th best team or something, mate.
Yeah, I think so too. They just bang Gragas every game, I think, and then it would be one. I'm not gonna lie.
Looking at the player in a void without actually thinking about his team is always really bad, and you won't get any conclusive information about him like this.
Yeah, there's also the kind of thinking that leads to like the Misfits roster from last year, right? Like all the players individually really good, none of them fit with each other because you didn't bother to check why they looked good on their teams. Like what was the synergies that you want to be retaining? Like instead you just do the Reddit thing and just put a bunch of MVP players together and then you're shocked when it doesn't work out. Like I still don't think there was only one bad player on that team in total, which is just a jungle, and I think everyone else was like really strong there, and where they positioned did not really show like how good they all could be. I wish Sellers was still in Europe, basically. Like he really didn't deserve the flack he got there. I'm glad Fobovan survived though.
It's also an absolute waste of time him playing in NA, by the way, a place where no one side lanes and where literally like he has no mid lane. Like that entire team's just a clusterfuck, man. And sadly, people are now going to say Soaz is shit and that he's fell off with the Misfits line because he's in a terrible team now. So there's nothing you can even do in that team, mate. It doesn't fit any of his strengths. It's so stupid that he went there. Whatever. I won't let myself get triggered by that. Right, Orome, here's the question. In line with that concept of how the team's balanced out, how it fits together, how would you describe what you do in Mad Lions?
Oh, I think... Oh, that's a hard question, actually. Contrary to what people would think, I'm not like the weak side player.
Okay. There we go. You started with some good perception, right? I like it.
I think when it comes to drafts on stage, where everyone is a lot less willing to take the dick, let's say, in terms of matchups and how you play them up.
Fair enough.
I am not like...
It's a technical term, by the way, fans. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that type of person to say, okay, I don't want to play this matchup, I might get fucked here. And in scrims, for example, I play strong side quite a lot. It hasn't happened on stage yet. I don't know, for multiple reasons. And I think I also have a role in Mad Lions in kind of leadership in real life, like getting everyone together, making sure we're all friends and putting everyone on the same page. Also, maybe after defeats, I will make sure everyone is okay, they're not in a bad spot mentally. I think in this team, specifically, there is a lot of talent. And even though I was always used before Splice Vipers, let's put it like that, I was always used to be like the carry. I think in this team, I don't have to be the carry. I just need to be really consistent, because if we are all inconsistent, then we're obviously going nowhere, right? I just need to be really consistent. So during the season, I went through multiple phases where I had nerfs as well. Like I was playing bad in lane, I was missing a lot of CS, so I had like CS deficits. Even though I was playing weak side, I could be even in CS. I just had CS deficits because of nerfs. So that made people have a bad opinion of me because they saw those CS deficits and me playing weak side. But I don't think that's my role in the team.
Okay. I mean, it does make sense if you play in a team with Humanoid and Kazi, you're going to be just be on the weak side sometimes. Similar when you had Freeze, etc.
Well, actually, there is a counter to that, which is one of the strong side teams he was on before Splice Vipers had Kazi Lab of bot lane, the Kif lineup. And he was known there more for Fiora than anything. Okay. Which is one of the reasons why, yeah, we haven't had many good things to say about him in the last weeks. But pre-split, he was the guy that we were hyping up more than anyone, maybe except for Kazi on the Mad Lions lineup, because he's had the fidelity to play both weak side on Splice Vipers, which was definitely on jungle and not on him, but on strong side on Kif, where they could have played around anywhere, and they ended up tending towards Orome instead. And Orome was really well known for being a consistently very, very strong side laner. Even as Vladimir, you can still see shades of that sort of thing, but we're not seeing that yet from the Mad Lions roster for whatever reason. And what we are seeing are multiple times where it does look like you're just getting dicked. Not necessarily in a one-on-one scenario. Mostly you get deficits due to three-man dives, like for example in the Schalke game and stuff like this, while your strong side goes on and on and on. But as a result, most people are only being introduced to you now, or maybe at EU Masters Splice Vipers, where they were like ignoring you when you're against Yopper of all people. Like they're obviously going to think of you as a weak side player, right? That's kind of inescapable right now.
I mean, like you can even take the example from Schalke.
Yeah.
They trim and dive top. Like I can ult and clear the wave. They use a lot of time. They don't even get any plates, and then we get full bot tower for it. Like I'm really happy with that play happening.
Yeah.
Even though people will look at me badly. The same thing for like the Fnatic games when they can be in a bush top lane and we literally take 2 towers bots. Like I'm really happy if the enemy team does this plays, even if it makes me look bad.
I definitely think, I definitely agree with you there. But the thing is that it's difficult to say as good things about you as we were able to say about like Finn last year, right? Until we see you on the champions in the setups where you can show that you are that good, right? Like it's difficult for us to bring your name up when we have conversations about Althari and stuff until your team puts you in a position where you can give those performances. Right now, there's a theory that you can. But we haven't seen that you can do it on the LEC stage. We know historically you've done it on lower stages. We don't know yet for a fact you can do it on the LEC stage. I want to see you guys do it. I think right now the meta probably doesn't favor it, but I do want to see you guys do it in the future. And I'm still confident you can pull it off. It's just I'd be lying if I could like speak to you in the same regard that I could speak to someone like Althari now, right? There'd be nothing to indicate it yet.
I mean, I'll tell you what. This is happening in scrims, so don't worry about it. We just need to find our place. We just need to find our place as a team. Be consistent on stage because our scrims look nothing like how we play on stage. I think Kaiser can agree to that.
I mean, they look a bit chaotic.
Yeah. So when we find our place as a team, everyone finds like their position, their role in the team, what they need to communicate, what they need to do in game to win. And I know my role as well because right now, like I said, I'm trying to like kind of be okay at everything, but not excel at anything. When I find that thing that I need to excel at, then I can like show my skill set, right?
Sure.
Right, in light of that, since you referenced Finn there, veteran, in the last week they played a game where your boy here played Renekton, right? Now, if we're talking about picks, right, I want to know this. Is it Renekton fucking whack this year? Like, it was amazing last year when there was that spear thing, but like, it doesn't even look that good as a pick now. Why did you pick that particular champion, or what was the concept in the comp there, Roma?
So basically, we get fucked mid. We have no prior mid. We have no prior bot, and they have set top. Renekton is the only champion that can.
Yeah.
Renekton is the only champion that can contest prior against that. So we need prior somewhere, right?
The theory sort of makes sense, Sacred.
Okay, it sort of makes sense, but you tell me that, then you leash top, and then 4 minutes in, you remember, oh yeah, mid has priority as you're getting 3-man dove after you leash top. If you pick this to have priority top, you guys saw into a strange way about playing out that game. Like, he can even do a leashless on Gragas at that point, 3 camps topside, and then hover onto you if you're worried about Tristana moving in. And you can still actually delay the wave crash and deny a dive there for it. And then he just wastes his time, and Victor gets a really good reset at some point for his first back. But instead you did a really weird setup. That's really antithetical to what you just said you picked Renekton for.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at stats, Larsen is the mid laner in LEC that moves away from his lane the least, right? And also, I think we assumed for some reason that he will ward Raptors and reset in that specific situation, right? So I was like, okay. So now the wave, I'm gonna let him crash the wave. They can't dive me as 2 people. The wave is gonna bounce, and we're gonna dive him on the bounce.
Okay. So you literally just assumed Larsen wasn't going to... I'm actually surprised to hear that he's the guy that roams the least, by the way. I would have assumed that would be Featherven because Featherven literally wasn't able to roam in the first 2 weeks that he was playing.
Pretty hilarious in the context that you did introduce him to the show as being the most like Froggen of all the mid laners, though. So that is pure banter.
That is true. That is true.
I mean, the second mid laner that moves the list is Nugduk. And it's kind of amazing that he moves less than Nugduk, but I guess he made up for it in that game.
How do you know that, by the way, that he roams the least? Like, do you have some advanced stats people giving you that info, or is it just something you looked up yourself?
We have an analyst that does these things for us.
Okay, someone's doing work. That's good.
That used to be my job for it. It's actually not that difficult to do once you figure out a system for it. It just takes time.
Now listen, Veteran, we all know there's no such thing as systems. Teams just play champions they like, and whatever happens. Blah, 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 even though every team in the world has a system. So that was probably the worst part of last year's show. The constant semantic debates that prevented us from actually just getting into the topic and discussing it.
They never wanted us to talk about.
They didn't.
Topic.
That was why they were doing it. That was the whole point. Exactly. They were just trying to do a 3-card Monty thing. Like, oh, where am I going now with it? Oh, look, I'm changing the word I'm using now. I was like, all right, mate, give me a break. I've got a question for you, Kaiser. Is Kazi actually as cocky as he seems?
No. He's actually, does he seem cocky actually? I think
in a way, here's the thing. He seemed a little bit humble when he came on the show, but to be fair, he's probably a bit nervous. But he also did seem like he had sort of a smug smirk every time he talked about the players and stuff. I saw a little bit of arrogance there.
I think he's just having fun actually. He's a really quirky personality. He's just, all over the place. I think he's just doing it for fun mostly. Even if he seems cocky, surely he is confident.
His playing style seems pretty cocky. It seems like he thinks he's the shit.
Yeah, but you can be cocky in game and be not cocky out of game, right? There's many different styles, I guess. And I think he's really aggressive, which I like in AD carries. And even if he is cocky, he has the skills to back it up. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, I he in real life, he's really a nice guy. He's super fun to be with. He always makes jokes. It's just
Okay.
And remember,
go on.
If you act cocky, you get more fans.
That is true. Yeah. That much is true.
Yeah.
With the exception of probably Europeans to North Americans or something, they always get flamed if they say anything like that. I've got a question for you. When we had, I think it was actually the episode where Kazi was on, he said something that was quite surprising to us, that in your team, Humanoid is the main shot caller or something, or is the most active voice. Is this accurate?
It was for sure at the start, because we were 4 rookies, right? So we don't really know anything about the game, compared to Humanoid at least, or Merrick. So at the start he was basically micromanaging us, Kazi said. Right now it's we had a lot of weeks where we could coach, or our coaches did a good job of coaching us macro, or even rotating, swapping to help, right? Basic stuff. So we kind of integrated that in our playstyles, and we can basically do it on autopilot, or not quite there yet, but we are doing it unconsciously already a bit. So he doesn't have to do everything anymore, but he for sure has the final call, because we know he's the most experienced player of all 5 of us. So usually he also makes the right calls, right? So. Yeah.
Let's put it like this. He doesn't always shot call, but when he says something, people listen.
Okay.
So that's that. But I think you have 4 rookies. You have a veteran who you think is really good. So obviously you're gonna let the veteran at the beginning dictate to the rookies how to play the game, and then the rookies can adapt and learn from the veteran, and then everyone can be on the same page. Because that's also a problem if you have a team with multiple veterans, that probably they look at the game in different ways, so they have contradicting situations. But if we all learn the game from scratch, from how he wants to play it, then we will have better synergy, and I think this shows in our games as well.
Okay.
When we win
but
together.
We are winning. Yeah.
Whereas you all kind of do the exact same fuck up when you peel off Baron. The macro thing was kind of interesting to me, because this weekend was a bit strange on that front from you guys.
Yeah, when we start losing, then yeah.
Then it goes
down. It feels like most of the losses have come from bad macro decisions. The first game against G2, if you'd have played that out differently, that's a 1 game.
I think against G2 we actually had fine macro early game, or even early mid game. But I think where I fell apart is we didn't know how to team fight. I think G2, for example, is super good in team fights. They always find flanks where you least expect them, right? And that game was just we got caught over and over. They just caught us off guard a lot of the time. So I think it was less on macro. It was more on just handling team fights against G2.
Yeah.
This weekend though, like especially was it the Rogue game? Yeah, I think it was the Rogue game where you guys basically do outscale them, and there's definitely no like third Drake scenario for you to even have to contest, but you are contesting every Herald, every Drake at points where you are weaker, even though you won't be weaker in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Like that game was a very, very strange game to watch. And then also you did a similar thing versus Schalke, though it wasn't like as big of a deal. But you were essentially delaying a free win for a long time by going for every neutral objective possible and setting up that way. Also, Shadow honestly looked a bit strange on the Karthus. I mean, I was playing Karthus as if it was Kindred. I don't think I ever saw him do a suicide play like once. It was very strange to see this perma range Karthus that never wanted to use his passive. But the second game for sure versus Rogue. Rogue was your second game, right? Yeah, Rogue was. Like that you had an absolute win condition that was less about snowballing your lead. You were behind, but you had an absolute win condition next 5 to 10 minutes, and because of how you played out early, you weren't forced to contest like a third Drake scenario. So I like what even happened in that game that caused you guys to contest literally everything. You did it all together, but
so at the start, even against Excel when we lost, we were really, really behind early, and we were cross mapping everything. And basically, our whole playstyle, like for a long time, was around cross-mapping everything and picking outscaling champions and just outscaling the enemy by cross-mapping. And we had to learn not to do that, basically, right? So we had some weeks where we focused on how to take objectives, how to set up for them with the waves and stuff like this. And I think since our last few weeks were focused only on that, we went into the game really tunneled on contesting every objective. And basically, it was really, really, really bad. And we were, our brains were AFK, and we just autopiloted to contesting every objective, which is the same thing we did like for the past couple of weeks, which is what we were practicing. But it was obviously really bad. This is no excuse. I'm not trying to make excuses. It's just.
I will say, without trying to sound like LS veteran, that is one of my biggest pet peeves when I watch the game, is when the team that has the scaling just doesn't actually play to it at all. Like, it's probably the most annoying thing you can see. Just as an observer on the outside, because you just think like it's the other team that has to do something now.
Especially because we'd been told by Kazi that humanoid is the big shot caller, right? And there was going to be a definite point post Lichbane and Rabadon's where the victor was actually going to be able to sideline against everybody on the enemy team, and you're suddenly going to be gifted an insane amount of pressure. I just watch you guys go over and over and over again for these useless lucky. It's the most obvious thing. It's probably the reason why it annoys analysts the most, is because it's the most obvious thing. Like any random observer can see if they just know one bit of information, like the Victor v Tristana thing. If they just know that, they can see, okay, you guys are like fucking this up here. It kind of reminded me of when Misfits played against Splice the first time, when it was the newer Misfits with Leader and Dan, when it was the newer one. And even though they had the hard outscaling composition, they were constantly contesting useless Drakes with Gangplank before he'd even finished Trinity Force and just dying over and over again for no reason. Like, it really reminded me of that game. That's what you guys look like this week. Apparently, that was the purpose of what you were doing.
Being as you guys yourselves knew to playing in LEC and in the big stage matches, etc., how would you explain that? Because it's obviously a very common thing in League of Legends in particular, where everyone is a Twitter analyst and they're all experts about what everyone should have done. One of the things I always say to people like that is, like, I'm sure the player himself, if he was sat in your seat just watching a game, would also agree he'd know exactly what to do. But when you're in the moment, there's something different about it, right? When you're actually like just in the moment of playing the game, you can't really sort of think bigger scale like that, right?
Yeah, like it's actually like surprisingly hard to think about everything. Like, for example, when we play in scrims and we make a mistake and you see the mistake like on this like bigger screen, right? Like the mini-map is like laid out in front of you. Then like it's super obvious you made the mistake, or like why you made the mistake or something. Or like that is even a mistake, right? But in game, like you can kind of only see your character, right? Like you don't really know what, or like exactly what your top laner, what your mid laner, what your jungler wants. Like there are like 4 voices basically. So it's like a lot harder than you would think it is. Just because there's like so much information that you need to like know what you want, what you should do, and what you want to do.
Yeah, like most of the time on stage. I mean, not necessarily on stage, but when you play a game, you work with incomplete information. Like, for example, it's really easy for a spectator to see that, top lane is getting dove. We should have defended this. But this comes from 1 minute earlier where you see the wave is stacking into you and you're like, I need my jungler here in 1 minute or I'm fucked. So you never know. Like it's easy to blame the jungler and say, oh, this guy is right. He wasn't there on the dive, but it's actually the fault of the top laner. Or maybe the top laner actually said, I need you here in 1 minute, and the jungler was like, no, I need this camp. So you never know just by looking at the game whose fault it is for what happens.
To clarify, I definitely didn't blame Shadow for that top dive. Just clarify.
No, it wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, I mean, from like an outsider's perspective, it's just really easy to see the mistakes. Like, you just look at them, like they're laid in front of you, but like in game, it's just because also like there's so much like it's kind of like sometimes it's really hectic. Like especially when you're behind, like you kind of feel like, or like you're kind of under pressure because like they can make a play and like do you have to defend or do you want to cross map or something like that? Like you have to think about all this stuff. Like you have to take into account like how strong your teammates are, and like sometimes that's just really hard to do all at once. So like sometimes mistakes just happen.
So basically, what Kaiser means is that information is getting lost in the comms. Like maybe someone said something really important, but since you had like 5 other things to focus on, you didn't hear it, and then yep.
I will say on the example you gave of like, why did that gank happen if a fan says that? That's actually one area where it's unfortunate, like also the way that we spectate the game. Because it's the same thing in my game of CSGO. When you watch a CSGO match, because they have that thing X-ray on so you can see the enemies through the walls, I always say they should turn that off more in the match because too many noob fans who are watching think that like the pro player knows where those fucking people are. So it looks obvious to you that like, oh, there's a guy waiting there. It's like, if you turned it off, you'd realise there's nothing there, you can't see anything. So similarly, if you have the fog of war on, you would know so much more about like what the players can see, but they very rarely show that view. If you notice, I know they used to do it a lot in LCK for like the jungler to show his path and or whatever, but I think they should try and do that more in the broadcast because otherwise people do look stupid. Because as you said, there's like if you can see no fog of war, you can see the gank coming a mile away, but you wouldn't see that in the game. The gank comes out of the nowhere, obviously.
Nowhere, exactly. Yeah. Also, like especially like when playing now, like it's like from an observer view, like they're like sitting in the bush, right? Like you think, oh, they're never gonna face check. They're not on Baron, right? But like you can't see that in the moment, right? Like you can't see if you have no wards on Baron. Are they doing it? Like maybe they have Azir with Death Cap. Like they can do it in 5 seconds. Like you have to face check, right? And then you get Nautilus hook and do that. So like, yeah, it's basically like a flip half the time.
Now I want to ask about Shadow a little bit, right? Because here's the thing. Because everyone not only memes in League of Legends a lot, but they tend to all repeat the same phrases because they become popular. I noticed that the excuse every jungler's been given for the last 3 years when he has a bad game is like, oh, it was a coin flip. And I'm like, what fucking coins are you guys using? Some of these are like 80 to 20. Like, that's not a coin flip. It has to be a 50-50 to be a coin flip. But with that said, when people describe Shadow as a coin flip jungler, that I think makes perfect sense. So how do you guys see this guy in your team? Because sometimes he either just completely smurfs or sometimes the Karthus game happens, you know. And that was a 1 game for fuck's sake, so...
I mean, Kaiser, do you want to start on this or should I?
Yeah, you go first. I don't know.
Okay. So, basically, I think he is very inexperienced still. I think when he is insanely good mechanically. Like, he's probably the best player mechanically in this team. Like, even with Karzi and Marek. He's really good mechanically. And when he's in a comfortable situation, he most of the time does the right decisions and can carry a game. But when he's put in a position that he is not comfortable with, there he falters. And that's why sometimes you see him, like, that's why people see him as coin flip. Because maybe in some games, analysts see this, and they on purpose put him in a position that he's not comfortable in. Like this happened, for example, in our game against Origin. I don't know if you remember. I was playing Cho'Gath, he was playing Rek'Sai.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
go on.
Where they split the map, and basically he's not comfortable yet with splitting the map, right? Like, this doesn't happen a lot in national leagues. This doesn't happen in solo queue. This doesn't have a lot of experience. So, obviously, when that problem hit him, it was like, what do I do now? And then he didn't do the best decisions in that game, right? So that's why I think people look at him as a coin flip jungler. But I think with experience, and probably even in summer split, he will be a really insane jungler, and he won't be like coin flip anymore.
Okay.
I have to ask about that Origin draft. Actually, like, what was the plan there? Were you thinking you were going to survive to like Yumi Cho'Gath destroying everyone, or like what the fuck. But like I struggle to see even what Shadow is supposed to do there, right? Like he can't make an acceleration play on midsection. You can maybe try to do mid into top side and try to dive repeatedly on that, but that's very easy for them to match because they have fucking Orm with TP and Spellbook in mid lane. Like I don't understand how you're supposed to accelerate. So Exo is just going to become giga useless later on versus a fucking Karthus, like with the most beast frontline in the history of man. Like it was such a strange. That's the worst draft we saw in the entirety of the LEC. By the way,
There is a reasonable explanation.
Yeah, hit
so
me.
Chill out. Okay, so basically in that week there were two scrim blocks, scrim partner teams. One was perma picking Yumi. One was perma picking Karthus. We were in the one with Yumi, so we were like, oh, Yumi is the shit this week. And
apparently it was not.
Apparently it is not.
Right.
And apparently Karthus is also a thing. So we went into second phase. Like there is no junglers. What is this? If we pick Rek'Sai here, there's nothing they can pick. And and you're like, this is a jungler.
It was literally the first week, I think, on the new patch where they buffed the jungle XP.
Right.
If I remember correctly. So like Karthus, like it basically flew under our radar. Like, of course, it makes sense, right? Like farming junglers, jungle XP gets buffed is like that's way better. But we just didn't think about it. So yeah, we went at least, and then the Karthus was open. And
yeah, once you pick Rek'Sai there, and they pick Karthus GP, like I cannot pick anything top to make the draft better because they will just split them up top, and I will have to play 1v2. So basically, Cho'Gath or bust there.
Thing is, though, even though you guys aren't in such a great place in terms of standing in the league, like there's many teams above you, obviously, I don't actually feel as though there's much to like aside from joking, I don't think there's much to diss your team about. Like most people didn't expect this to be the split you did well anyway because it's such a brand new team. So I actually think if you look at the fact that so many of the losses had moments where you were leading or you could have won the game, it's very different if someone loses games and all the losses are like should lose that game, and even some of the wins are like how did they fluke that? So I think overall, like actually, it's been a fairly good split.
Yeah, I would say it's a good split, and the losses we had are because we are a new team and we're experiencing problems that with experience and time they will be solved. So yeah, I would call it a successful split so far for us.
Yeah, for sure. Like also like I really like, for example, that we can show like how good we can be. For example, against like Fnatic, like that was like the most clean game we've like ever played.
Yeah, that was our peak performance.
Exactly. Like if we can like continue with like performances like that, then like we can be like super good.
I have to say, like, talking really candidly there about the separation between like the Yumi side and the Karthus side when it came to scrims. People are so unaware about how often that happens every week when they're like, wait, why aren't they prioritizing this as well? Because they were in the other like half of the scrim blocks in that week. Like that actually happens way more often than people think. But on the point about like how good your split's been, I think most people were expecting that this particular split, you make it into playoffs, but we weren't expecting any more than that. I think everybody, probably even now, with the exception of like Dom, who doesn't really know anything about Europe anyway, doesn't pretend to either, like had you as a potential worlds contender. And everyone, definitely based off what we've seen, this split still has you down as one of those. Even if you have weeks like this, where it's like, just what the fuck are they doing? Like what the fuck are they doing? I have no idea what the fuck they're doing. All right. Like if Odo doesn't run it, like they somehow win the game versus you with Karthus with Ocean Soul, like the fact moments like that happen, like that should never happen ever. Stuff like this, you know. But like if we are ever harsh on you, it's definitely going to be because we actually do expect to have you guys as like A to S tier players in a year's time. Like your roster is probably the best constructed rookie roster that we've seen in a long ass time. Like Thorin's issues with Shadow as a coin flip player, because when he's not a coin flip player, he's like single-handedly dismantling the top teams in Europe, you know? Like Kazi has also been like performing at that kind of level. And you, Orome, are the guy who's not yet being allowed to show that they can be at that level. You know, that's why you're getting singled out by a lot of people.
So I wouldn't like to say that because I still had some bad laning phases because I had some nerfs. So some parts of that time is deserved. Okay, like I will take it. You know, it's not how I play in scrims. It's not like how I play normally. But obviously, as a player, I need to get over it. Right? It's one of my problems.
I mean, it's I think like mostly like also a team problem. Like we play way more scared in official matches. this is like what we had identified. Like lately, if we don't have like brain dead engage, then it's super hard for us. So I think what we have to like just focus on is like we have to relax on stage. We have to like find a way to do that, and then like I think it just comes naturally because like in scrims we are already like really aggressive. Like I mean, we have Kazi who goes like 10 deaths every game or something, and then.
But
also,
in
like,
an actual LEC game, it's just harder to pull the trigger. Like you just feel like hesitant or something.
Actually, I want to say something on that note.
All right.
I feel like since the start of the season, it's a lot harder to play now because there is pressure on everyone. Basically, the public perception is that I'm bad. So obviously, if I had some bad days, I will let that get to me, and I will feel bad about it. And then the next game, I will play not to lose instead of to win. Right, so I'll play even worse because of it. Then you have Karzi, who is like, everyone expects me to be the best, to be really good. I need to stomp this game, and puts a lot of pressure on himself. So, for example, in the Raw game, he himself said that he choked a bit because of all the pressure that he put on himself. Then you have Marek, who really cares about what people say about
That's
him.
humanoid, right?
Yeah. Humanoid. Sorry. And he had some bad games because he wasn't on comfortable champions, or because he was also in charge of micromanaging everyone, which Marek is a player that, or Humanoid, sorry, is a player that likes to be on his own, like not talk very much and focus on what he's doing, right? Then he's really, really good. He's not the kind of player that just talks a lot, micromanages everyone, and then he himself is also flashy while doing that. I don't think that kind of player exists. So I think everyone is going through their own struggles during the splits because of pressure from outside.
Nah, don't be so harsh on yourself. You're still a top 2 Romanian top laner in LEC.
True, and
there we
never
go.
change.
What do you think about Odo, by the way? What do you think about Odo?
Oh, he's a bit hard stuck.
You're stuck in Elo hell, isn't he?
He is. I mean, he hard carried this week on Vladimir, I think. I think he was easily the best performing player.
There's nothing can be done with that team, though. That's why I told you, Veteran. I get that people wanted to meme Unforgiven because it was funny, and there was obviously some truth to it. Yeah, like Gachi Inax has looked better at the moment relative to what they need in that team, but that team is fucking bad. Let's be real.
Yeah,
like
everyone
they were never going to make the playoffs no matter what, mate. That was never going to happen.
But they were always going to beat D2, Thorin. That's all they needed to do. They were always going to beat him. I won money on that. They were always going to beat him. It was predictable. Or even say.
So Odo is a really good player, though. Like, I really respect him.
What other top laners do you like respect? Do you like watch VODs of tops and stuff? Or
do you ever watch ProView?
Yeah, of course, all the time. Of every other top laner. I think every top laner is different because as a top laner, you can be good at so many different things.
Sure.
You can be like good at carry champs. You can be good at wave management, at trading, at positioning, at jungle.
What's the most impressive to you? Which quality always impresses you if you watch someone?
Well, I would say Alphari's ability to position and trade in a way in lane that he is never losing. Like, Alphari is the kind of player, like, he won't give you a winning trade, he just won't fucking give you a winning trade. If you have a winning trade, well, fine, he's not touching that minion wave, you know? And he fights for every minion, like, in a good way, he fights for every minion, and he wins. And he doesn't miss a creep, like, it's amazing. When you play against him, you're like, where the fuck am I 10 CS behind? And then you notice that for the last 6 fucking waves, he's like perfect CSing everything. So that's like Alphari, right? I mean, he has some weaknesses as well as a top laner, obviously, but he's quite amazing in my eyes for this.
Sure. No, I'm with you on that. It does feel impossible to put him behind in the game, no matter what the matchup is usually.
Yeah.
I feel like his team also helps him with this, but it's definitely his credit for it.
I mean, it's a team with like 3 S-tier players on it minimum, and then you have Xerxes and Destiny as well. But like, it is a pretty monster strong roster in general. Like, I still insist NateDOhDoubleG is an S-tier player, by the way. That's generally where I split with people. But I think Alphari is one of the best players in the entire league. I think him and Perks are the 2 best players in the entire league right now. Is support fucking doomed, by the way, Kaiser? Do you watch POVs or?
I watch Hylissang for roaming. key for laning usually. Like, I mean, sometimes I watch like other supports when there's like a matchup I want to watch, but there's not much.
I've got a question for you then. When you actually watch a Hylissang Pro view, because again, now you're watching like as he sees the game and the Fog of War stuff, do the moves he make more sense when you actually watch it from the Pro view?
No.
Some of them are still crazy.
I mean,
fair enough.
I think to get into his brain, like you need to see the voice comms, and without voice comms, it's really hard because I mean, of course, like sometimes it makes sense, right? Like for example, if he looks at like I don't know top wave and then immediately goes bot lane, like he's gonna set up like a dive bot lane or something, or like stuff like that. Like for sure, like sometimes it makes more sense, right? But like half the time it makes no sense because you don't see the comms. Like you have to see the comms to like know for sure what they're planning. Because like sometimes I mean Fnatic is like really creative. Like I think they're the most creative team in the league. Probably
and decisive.
Yeah, exactly, and like more so than even G2, I would say. And Hylissang is like a big contributor to that. And yeah, like if I saw the comms, then yeah, I mean I would for sure like know what he's like up to and stuff. But yeah, I mean.
I mean, the difference between G2 and Fnatic in terms of creativity is that G2 plays the game really well on a tempo level. Like, they understand tempo so well that they know exactly when to contest an objective and how to contest it, and if they need to cross-map it. And they do it, but it's pretty standard what they do once we understand how they think about the game. But Fnatic also understands tempo, except instead of trying to cross-map if they can't fight you, they will find a way to cheese you in, like... the most random bush on the rift, and then you'll be like, well, I guess I don't have tempo anymore.
And also, like, you feel like they're like three times more players on the map because like they're just like everywhere basically. Like I think Hylissang and like Selfmade, they like do a really good job of like covering everywhere. Like they play really good with vision, for example. Like if they know, for example, that that your top side is not warded or something. Then they just go there, like they pressure mid lane, top lane, Hylissang goes bot lane or something, and then like you have like pressure everywhere basically.
Yeah.
Like, as a Fnatic, and like it's just really hard to play against them.
Yes.
That's something G2 were doing against them actually last year. G2's most common weird play that they did that no one else really did was they would take full vision control of one side of the map that they're pressuring, and then they basically traded that vision to make a play on the other side of the map where they had no vision control at all. Like they did that to Fnatic a lot in their best of 5 series, and Fnatic countered that by basically oinking in the Fog of War where they would go make the play. So then G2 started oinking in the Fog of War first the next game, and then the whole series is going like this, and it was really funny to watch actually. That would be something Fnatic probably lifted from them. But in terms of like the pressure that they put on and the cheese thing particularly, I fully agree with you on that. Like one thing that they do that a lot of other teams don't do is that they always default into like an 0-3-2 setup where like either Bwipo or generally Nemesis will kind of like oink behind Bwipo on the side lane, and you'll think you're making a play on Bwipo with Nemesis on a reset or something, or just leaning there, but he's actually just hard in lane the whole time in Fog of War. Like it's really difficult to therefore break their 4-1 if they ever actually end up in a tempo 4-1, and you basically are forced to trade. But if you're forced to trade, then they'll just all in on the top side where they have to. They're a creative team, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like really, really good at like moving pressure on the map. Like if you think the bot lane is strong side, like in 2 seconds the top lane is strong side. Like it's crazy to me, but they use TP extremely well. Like they go for bot lane dives at level 3. Like you think you're safe, you're not safe against Fnatic, that's for sure. And yeah, I mean that's like their biggest strength I think, that they're like super decisive, super creative. Like yeah, that's basically it.
Orome, what do you think of Janna as a top lane pick? And then winning the fucking game against one of the best teams in Europe with it as well. Like that's pretty bold, right?
Oof. Well, I think it's not a troll pick at all. I think it's actually a legit pick. It can do both strong side and weak side, depending on how many points you put in queue, because if you want to play weak side, you just put 2 points in queue, it 2-shots the casters, so you can't stack waves into Janna. And if you want to play strong side, you max W, and you just fucking right-click enemy and press W on them perma, and if they try to engage on you, tornado them. And your scaling is actually surprisingly good. I think you can only pick her in disengage comps, or if you outrange the enemy to force them to go into you. Like, for example, when you have Ezreal Yumi, I think they had Ezreal Yumi in that game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did.
Then
Yes.
the enemies basically need to engage on you, otherwise Ezreal Yumi is going to 1v9 the game, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, Janna is good, because it's so hard to engage on Ezreal Yumi with a Janna. That's
Yeah, it's over. It's over.
so that's the only reason I think Janna is a good pick in this engage comps.
I mean,
And they-
I think it's like also like a Soraka replacement kind of. Like they played it with Olaf, I think. So like it was kind of like the Soraka. I mean, the last patches of Soraka, Yumi, Olaf, right? The trio combo was like kind of unbeatable on last patch, and now like the Janna, Yumi, Olaf combo might make a comeback or something.
Mhm.
But yeah.
I mean, it can't really function now with the spell feast change, or do you think it's one of the champions that can go like Doran's into a 10-minute spell feast?
Doran's into... I mean, you don't need spell tips. You just go Doran's into...
Okay,
Atens.
it's still here. There you go.
I mean,
Good job,
to be
Brian.
honest, like
You removed it.
even before, I think people made a mistake of like going Spare Thieves because like Janna Wave is actually like really good. So like she can like easily farm. So like just going Doran's Ring is like no drawback, right?
Yeah, there's no drawbacks.
I do think Fnatic like straight up lost that draft, by the way. I kind of part with a lot of analysts on this, but when you open with Gragas and then go into they went into Set plus Rakan, like immediately on second rotation, pretty much all blind, leaving open Yumi and Ezreal. Like they didn't even take Yumi Ezreal like in the opening rotation when enemy picked Gragas. They picked Ezreal plus and then went into Yumi. Like they left everything open. And blind picked everything into them. They didn't there are multiple champions you can pick into Yumi that's good, and you know they're going to go through red side second ban phases, but you just let them have Yumi anyway, and blind Rakan. Like it kind of blows my mind what they did with that draft.
I mean, that's like kind of the downside of Hylissang, that he doesn't really have the biggest champion pool. Like, I mean, like for sure he can play a lot of champions, but he doesn't perform on them, right?
Yes.
So I think they just want him on Rakan or Thresh, and then he's like really good, right? So that's probably what they were thinking, right? That if we go Rakan, they can't really ban us out, because like
Sure.
if they wait for the support pick on second rotation, then they just ban Thresh and Rakan, and what does he pick, right?
Yeah, I've always thought like the problem is obviously when you're as good as Hylissang, it's not like he can only play certain champions, but he's just so good on some of them, and then he's just like average on the others. So I get why if any team he's in should focus around those picks to some degree, but this draft might be a step too far. Veteran.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, they just left so many power picks open to them and gave them counter pick options and everywhere else. Like, it was insane to me, to be honest, watching that draft. Like, I'd hyped up Fnatic the whole week as being like, Fnatic will beat G2 this week. And then the moment the draft was over, it's like, yeah, so G2 have won the game. It's just over.
I mean,
Kaiser, sorry, go ahead, Rome.
If you want to beat G2, I think you should focus on Caps as a Caps champion pool, because as AD carries, he is not comfortable or anything except Aphelios and Ezreal.
Senna? Oh, right, yeah, Ezreal. No.
Yeah, but I mean, Senna is like
Senna doesn't
100%
work now.
that, right? So.
Yeah, it's a permanent. So
Kaiser, are you someone who likes to trash talk? Do you have the balls to flame people?
kind of depends, but usually not.
Okay, well, we'll test it out. So, what do you think of Destiny from Origin?
Oh, shit.
Just wondering, just curious guy.
I would just say, like, he's really good on certain champions.
All right. Any that we've
like,
seen so far?
Like Nautilus, for example.
There we go. He's not bad on that. Yeah, he's not bad on that. True.
I mean, he's pretty good on that. I'll give him that. I think he's getting a bit carried by his team. Like, I think he has like super good solo banners. He has like one of the best AD carries. But I think a lot of people are like flaming him too much. Like, I think
they go too far.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think he's like that bad, right? Like, he's for sure like LEC level, but
okay.
I think he's like. I mean, the worst player I want to see for sure. Like, I'm just gonna say that, but it's not a shame, right? Like, if you're on a team like that, but they could have probably gotten a better support. But I mean, he's doing fine. He's doing fine. He's doing fine. Like, he's not that bad. I think he's actually like in this meta as well. Like, I think he works really well. Like with Nautilus, Leona as well. I think he actually plays those champions really well. So, I mean, maybe if the meta shifts or something. Like, he doesn't perform as well, but right now he's doing fine.
Thorin, the Gilhoto episode that you did, didn't he name a bunch of supports that they tried out before they went to Destiny?
I think so, yeah, but I don't remember them, unfortunately.
All right. Kaiser, did he try you out?
I'm not sure if I can say that, but I mean,
as far as I remember, the story he gave was something like that. Destiny was in Europe and was, like they were trying out him and a bunch of other people. And then he implied, like, he just smurfed all the scrims and looked super sick or whatever. Like, obviously some shit I haven't seen yet. But, were you in the mix? Were any good players in the mix?
I mean, I got invited, but I didn't accept the offer because
why?
I mean, not accept the offer, but like to do
the tryout.
Yeah, exactly, why didn't you do it?
I had some appointments at that time, so I couldn't.
Why are you saying it in a really mysterious way? Like, I had some appointments. What are you doing? Putting money in a fucking shell account offshore? What are you talking about? What were you possibly doing?
I mean, it was kind of unlucky because, like, I had one appointment. Like, I mean, of course, like talks with team, right? At that point, like everyone was just talking with teams, and I had one appointment at that time, and it got delayed on the next day, and I think they only had like 2 scrim days, so
right, okay,
it was like kind of unlucky for me, but yeah.
All right. I mean, to be fair, after last year, Upset's pretty good at playing by himself in the bottle lane anyway, so... just saying, guys, just saying. He's had that training.
I see you brought out the flamethrower.
Listen, I just see things. I just say what I see, that's it. I'm like an innocent child.
There's a meme in my Twitch chat that every time Destiny does something wrong, everyone just posts like upset thinking to himself, it was worth it to keep NateDOhDoubleG and Alphari. It's worth it to keep NateDOhDoubleG and
Yes,
Alphari.
there you go. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So who outside of Mickey X and Hylissang do you think is like an underrated support?
I mean, I think like there's not really a support that is like really bad. Like there is no pushover in the LEC. Like for example, on the top, bottom 3 teams.
That's true because Jack Troll isn't in the league anymore. You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, what? Sorry, what?
What did you say?
Keep going.
I mean, like actually, to be honest, like to be fair, like I don't think Jack Troll was that bad. Like I think a lot of people are memeing it too much, but he was like for sure the worst support, right? But he was.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I asked that question earlier. You are the most political person on the entire show. Like, you'll defend anyone.
But who said that Jack Troll is overrated? There was someone in the quiz that said Jack Troll is overrated.
Actually,
I remember who.
Actually, was it you? No. I'm not sure anymore.
It was Orome.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't you? I swear it was you.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
I'm not sure anymore. But anyway, like on the bottom 3 teams, like Steelback, I think is like pretty good actually. Like when I played against him in LEC, like he was like, roaming really well. Like I mean, of course, like I couldn't really pressure that much because they had comp. Like he was really good at that time as well, and we didn't really play that much for lane pressure usually. But I think Steelback would be like really good in a better team. Like if he had like I mean, let's be honest. What
sort of ADC does he need?
No, not ADC, but more. Then he would like work really well because like he always like used to roam with jungle mid to other lanes, right? And then, I mean, right now he can't do that because they never have like winning mid lane, so it's harder for him, I would say. I mean, Limit. I think SK as a whole is like a bit of a clusterfuck, I guess. Like. They don't really work out that well. Like I think they're way too passive as a team. Like I think if they had like a few points of aggression that maybe could work out, I think Limit is actually like quite good and like as a player. Like I think like he like Steelback he could work in a different team, right? But on SK it's just like you have nothing to play with. Like it's I think on SK like it's not really about the individual players, mostly like the team composition, like the mix of players is like they're basically the same player and they're more passive and they cannot do anything. And then like what do you do, right? As a support, like you play.
No, here's the thing. That makes a lot of sense because basically that's something we actually said early on when SK was starting off badly, which is like, it's not like it's the worst roster in Europe. Like each person, like a lot of them are all right players. It's just you can't have all of those players in one team. Like,
exactly.
Like for example, even if it was someone super good, you need one really strong player, like you said, that could put some pressure on.
Yeah.
I mean, Trick needs someone to play around. In that team, there's only people that want to outscale.
Yeah. I mean, actually, to be honest, like Crown Shot can play aggressive, but I mean, I think they're also like trying that sometimes. But I think they have to like really change their draft as well. Like I think, for example, the Tom Kench picks or something, is just too passive. Like if they're like passive players in other roles, and you're playing a passive support, so you can't make plays on bot side, then it's like doubling your weakness kind of. So I think SK needs to change the drafting style, I would say. I mean, other than that, like support-wise, who else is actually? I mean, Tor is fine, I would say. Like, he's pretty good.
You mentioned Stillback, and Stillback for me is kind of the golden boy who like isn't getting his chance to shine right now, because like loads of people have said good things about Denick, which is really good. I think Denick's good.
I mean,
Denick is really good.
Fine. Yeah. I mean, he's doing really well in Misfits. Like, he's one of the facilitators of that team.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually kind of surprised because I thought, like, when I played against him, he was not the greatest mechanically, but he's doing really well in LEC right now, so can't really trash talk too much. But yeah, I mean, I think like he's doing really well. Yeah, I mean, aside from that, like, there's, I want to see the team list.
Shall I list some of the ones you haven't said yet? We haven't talked about Dreams, Vander.
Oh, Vander. I think Vander and Sam is like a really good lane. They play really well together. I mean, of course, like Vander is a really experienced as well. Like, he works pretty well with the rookies, right? Like, he can probably lead them.
Yeah.
I mean, like as Kazi said in the last episode, or like when he was on the Elitists United, sometimes he forgets his hands, but I don't think it's like that bad, right? Like he's fine mechanically. And like Dreams, I mean, he was really good last season on SK, right? I thought he was like really good.
Sure.
Right now, I mean, the team is just. He can't really show him, like, kind of like Limit, right? Like, he can't really show what he can offer, or like Sleepback as well. Like, yeah. I think those.
I mean, there's no point roaming if you've got that mid laner. What's the
He
fucking
still
point?
does it anyway. Like, he still does it anyway and finds picks and kills the enemy jungler and actually makes mid lane work some games. And it's obviously very unlucky we don't have a strong mid, but yeah.
I mean, like, especially as a support, you're kind of like, you can only be as strong as your team is, I would say. Like, if you don't have anyone to play around, like, there is nothing for you to do. You can't look good. Like, support is already like the least how do you say,
impactful role.
I mean, not impactful. It's mostly like you don't get credit for doing good stuff, right?
Yes.
So
okay.
It's really, really hard to look on good on a bad team as a support. Like, it's actually basically.
I mean, the role is called fucking support. Like, you are supposed to be someone's butler, like I always say. Like, you know, you're not Batman. You're just Batman's butler. You just tell him, like, well, sir, the car's ready and I'll get the suit. Like, yeah, so if you've got a shit superhero, you can't do anything. Yeah, it makes perfect sense, Kaiser. So basically, every game you lose, just blame Kazi. Just say, come on, man, give me something to fucking work with here. I'm trying to do shit over it.
So the guy who said Jack Troll was overrated was actually Shadow, not Orome.
He's even coin flip with his opinions.
Yeah, there you go.
By the way, I will just say, Veteran, like, without making this too simplistic, it's going to be an incredibly simple point.
Sure.
Right? All the mid laners I know in League of Legends, off camera, most of them aren't like Febiven, where they'll just say what they actually think on camera, which is straight fire, just that most of them won't do it. Privately, by the way, the sort of shit that sometimes Perks and Febiven will jokingly say, where they all think like all the mid laners are the best players, and every other role is like they think top laners are shit versions of mid laners, and that they could play top lane, and they think AD carries are just idiots who auto attack and can't use abilities, and then they think the jungler and support are just people whose job is to come to mid lane. Like, that's how most pro mid laners think, right? And normally I'm the one trying to like make these guys be more reasonable, like, yeah, but you know, it can be very like a lot of pressure if you play AD carry, for example, because, you know, if it goes to the late game and you get your items, you must carry. If you're the top laner, you've got a lot of difficult matchups, you get left on island. I normally try to do that, but when I look at the standings right now, Veteran, look at the bottom 3 teams, and then look at the top 4 teams. And now, if you had to do in your mind do a ranking of the mid laners, like, the team standing is almost based on who the fucking mid laner is.
And there's also that the team that is the most successful is probably going to prioritize replacing mid lane with like the best mid laner they possibly can, right? Like, but you're right. I mean, honestly, if I look at it, it's that's
the bottom end especially looks pretty bad, right?
Yeah, Abadage, Genax, and then literally no consistent mid laner on Team Vitality at all.
Yeah,
Mickey just above them, and then I think humanoid should be higher, but he wasn't able to show it in the first few weeks, right?
Exactly. See, mid difference. It's all about mid difference now, boys.
Well, it's not about mid being a harder role. It's about mid having a lot of impact in games.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that is the one part that they do also do as well, by the way, Roman, that I do think is bullshit. Is like they do act as though all these people are playing the same game and that they're just way better. It's like you're in the middle of the fucking map. Like, it makes more sense. You would have more impact. If you're the top player, you're stuck on the other side. You know, it's perfectly logical, really.
I mean, the problem is that this season Riot introduced Rift Herald as a way to make top lane impact the game.
Yes.
But then they delayed the spawn of Drake to the spawn of Herald. Like, there's a delay between that. Yeah, it's distinct. So what they actually did is that bot lane will take Dragon, and then when
yes, exactly.
So, it's like that's not how you make the game.
No. That's the brilliant thing about Riot. Whenever they balance the game, it's like they only think of the first order of effects, and then every time it's like a whack-a-mole scenario where they push one thing down, it pops up somewhere else. They're like, "What? How did that happen?" It's like, think about it. What do you think was going to happen?
They're doing that again, by the way. They recently had a TP change that they've labeled it as top lane buff for the TP change. When all it's going to do is just make TP like the meta thing immediate.
Right, there we
mid
go.
lane is just going to be immediate on it because what they did was they did it via XP, and it's like, well, that's a solo lane boost, not a top lane boost, you fucking idiots.
Yes.
Like, so yeah, it's just gonna make a TP mid meta.
I mean, it's like the next patch you saw. There's on buffs Soraka, and then it's in brackets support.
Yes, no way, yes.
And when you look at the buff, it's actually like movement speed and heal on Q.
Yes.
I was like, how the fuck is this a support buff?
No, that's what I love, though, because you can imagine the guy who does the balancing in that sense at Riot. Like, this is going to make support so good, and then everyone else is just laughing like, yeah, sure. Support, you idiot. Like,
it's like you make adult movies and you label them for kids. That's make them for kids.
I mean,
there we go.
I think they Riot could do like a lot of good things if they talk to pros or something. Like, I think, or like people with actual.
Depends if they talk to you. If they say to you, like, was that a good move? You'd be like, well, it wasn't the worst move you could have done. And I guess, in some ways, the patch, you tried your answer. So everyone except you, Kaiser. Talk to Featherman or something. Yeah, there you go.
Guilty.
Okay.
But, I mean, yeah, but like, I think like a lot of time, maybe there's like something hidden behind the like lines or something. Like maybe they intended it to be like a top lane Soraka buff. Maybe, I don't know. But
then that next level that they're tricking us.
Yeah, exactly. Like they label it as something different, and then like they go on like 200 IQ sprees. But like some of the balancing choices are just like nonsensical, I would say.
I mean, it's not that hard to do this, right? You can just set your goals for yourself. Like, okay, make top lane more impactful, or buff, I don't know, X champion, and then you can send a quiz to like every team in LEC or in every league and ask them, do you think these changes are good? Yes or no, and why not?
They did that in season 8. They did that when they were doing the change that made targeted abilities take aggro from minions now. Like when they did that change, they sent an email around to everyone. I sent them there was like a 5 email chain between me and Riot about it, and then at the end they said, by the way, no matter what the change is going through as is, we're just getting feedback for next time. It's like, so this whole time I spent
actually
completely useless. Yes. So I never responded to another one of those again. It's like, okay, I literally can't have a single impact on this. They just know for next time they want to do something to the game, I guess.
Okay, but they could have some
theory,
impact.
yes.
They could, and it's not so hard. Like, we have a line of connection directly to Riot. They could ask us and make it really simple in a quiz with yes or no. Is this good? Yes or no? I don't know. Like, it wouldn't be so hard to implement if they wanted to.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of subtlety, by the way, Thorin, did you see the list of the overrated, underrated choices from people?
No, where was this?
So Shakarez tweeted out the full list of what everyone in that video has given as overrated, underrated, including the people who weren't featured. Jack Troll said the most overrated people coming into the LEC were rookie supports. Guess who he said the most underrated person was?
I mean, obviously it's not going to be a rookie, is it? So who is it?
Himself.
Himself?
I mean, he's a memer.
The sad thing is, though,
the underrated guy is himself.
The sad thing is, though, that probably actually explains part of his problems in the game. If he's not just like doing that for save face or something, if he actually genuinely believes he's really good, then it would make perfect sense why he's having such a hard time in the game. Like, you've got to have a reasonable expectation. Like, it's one thing what you say to the public. You can lie to fans or whatever, or make yourself seem cool or seem confident in your opponent. But if you genuinely don't actually, like, have a realistic opinion of yourself, you're never going to improve, in my opinion. That's going to be so hard to do.
That's so true.
Yes, I mean, like, I actually noticed it myself. Like, sometimes when I play really well, like, I feel like I'm a faker, you know, top 2 support or whatever. And then, like, the next day, immediately after that, I play like shit because I feel like I don't have to improve or something. So, like, I think having this mindset of, like, already being the best or something is, like, super bad because like, if you're already the best, what are you going to improve on, right? Like, is there, like, even a need to improve, you know? Like, I think it's, like, really bad to have that mindset.
I mean,
there's like a famous, I think there's like a famous sports quote that's something like that, where it says that you should like practice like you're the worst and then play like you're the best.
I mean, that's why a lot of players have the mentality that everyone is shit, so that doesn't make them super good or anything.
Yes.
Just that everyone is shit, right?
That's called the Mithy mentality.
So that's good. That's better than thinking, oh, everyone is really good, but I'm better, so I'm the shit. I'm perfect. You know, it's way better to think, okay, everyone is shit. I'm shit as well. I need to improve.
Yeah. Comfort kills competitivity. So,
how old was that tweet, by the way? Because the problem is I can't open that thing you sent me because I'd have to change the box or whatever. So, where was that? How old was the tweet with the list of all the underrated, overrated?
So the list was March 1st. But I'm pretty sure they did these. You guys can confirm. Did they do these before LEC started?
Yeah. I mean, like some people even said like Jizuka or something, right? Who is playing now?
Oh, right, because we wasn't known if he'd be in the league or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, if I had to do it again, I would change my more than half my stuff that I said.
What would you change them to?
I mean, I don't think Upset is overrated anymore.
Yeah.
Why not?
Because I had an opinion of him that he's a really cocky player and that he doesn't really carry games. But just from knowing the game better and from playing against him, I think he's hard to play against. Like, he does little mistakes, and he also does a really insane amount of DPS. Like, he knows when to do damage without getting punished for it, and he abuses every opportunity to do it. And before, I thought he was like a scaredy cat, like he doesn't go in, blah blah. But now I can see that he's actually a really good player, and he knows his limits very well.
Okay.
I think he kind of is like reckless in a way. Like, I think a lot of people call reckless passive, for example. But I think reckless is like one of I mean, he's like probably the best AD carry in the league by far. And
yeah, I agree.
That's not because like he's playing passive. Because like as an AD carry, if you're like passive, then like there's nothing for you to do. Like you should not be in LEC if you're passive.
Sure.
As an AD carry. So him playing passive is like, or like him being called passive is mostly because of like KDA, right? Like he doesn't often die, but it's not because he's not like pressuring like people. It's mostly because he just knows his limits like perfectly. Like, it's actually insane how well he plays. Because like he just knows mostly every matchup. Like, he knows how to play team fights. He knows where can they be. Like, can I step up to this wave and stuff like that? I mean, Fnatic also plays around him, right? Like, they do a really good job of isolating him, like in the side lane, for example, that he's always alone, like getting sideways and stuff like that. But like, he's like for sure like one of the players that are like the closest to being perfect, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
like, yeah.
There's a very big difference between like being a KDA player and knowing your limits. And I think for Reckless, it's not only knowing his limits. I think when he sees a play that is even like 60-40 in his favor, he won't take it, even though he knows that it's in his favor. Because he sees that maybe in 1 minute there will be like a 100% for sure play that he can take.
Okay.
And he doesn't need to take the 60-40 even though it's favorable. And because
I can see why, as a member of Mad Lions, you'd appreciate that.
I mean, I
just saying.
Okay. So I do the same as Reckless in terms of not taking like even 60-40s, but I don't know my limits that well. So
sure,
unless it's a Drake.
Unless it's what?
Unless it's a Drake.
Unless it's a Drake. Yeah, then I know my limits very well, and I will fight against a 2-item.
I've just actually found this list, the one that you were talking about, where it's like an Excel sheet of all the answers.
Yeah.
All I'll say is, like, I actually wish I'd seen this back when it first came out, because when I had Febivan on the Crackdown, he actually, when he heard me like flame Nemesis, because I said I thought Nemesis was a bit overrated, he was like, "Really, you think that?" And I was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "Good." Because that's who he put on here. He put Nemesis as the most overrated player.
Nemesis is actually really highly represented in that, to be honest, compared to...
I noticed the only two people who called Nemesis underrated is this guy called Orome and then fucking Hylissang, who, let's face it, like, if Hylissang didn't think that Nemesis was underrated, then he'd have to actually acknowledge that he's way better than he is, so...
Yeah, true.
I mean, he's basically fucking made Nemesis' career, so... You know, if you want to give him the credit, then Hylissang, do it, mate. You know, fair enough.
Before I ask you about the Nemesis thing, actually, who would you say is overrated now?
Who would I pick as overrated? Let me have a look. Who can I pick here? I mean, first and foremost, the problem with this is like what makes it tough to know the underrated, overrated part is it's supposed to be relative to everyone else because that's why they're rated, right? Yeah. So I'm not actually sure if I'm actually alone in this, but I personally think Inspired is a pretty overrated player.
Oofed. I think he's gotten a lot of criticism on this show as well.
More recently he has, but people really did think coming into this split he was going to be like one of the elite junglers, whereas like I've seen way too many games that were kind of dodgy from him. I think he's actually the player who underperforms the most on that team.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean, if I had to answer again at the same time, I would say Broxa. If I had to answer now...
You're my favorite player. Continue.
Who would you pick now?
I mean, it's hard to say, to be honest. I think every player in the top 6 of the league is actually really good. They're not overrated. And
I'd have to say, based on the way the split began, the most underrated is probably Odoamne. Because when it began, everyone last year thought he was shit. So as a result, this year, everyone thought, I'm sure some people thought Schalke would be decent, like they did, but they don't think they thought it was kind of Odoamne. They thought it would be like Abadage improves, like forgiven carries or some shit. Whereas, if you look how bad his team is, I have mad respect for anyone who can look good on a really bad team like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I feel like also his playstyle right now is very selfish, and he must
should be.
And
yeah, should be.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, right?
It's going to make him look good, though. Sure, I get it.
Yes, it's going to make him look good, and I think his champion pool is not very broad. Like he's been mostly playing Aatrox, so that's why I'm not looking at him as the best player, you know. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure exactly how good he is, because on that team, I understand he needs to play selfish. I understand he needs to carry games, and that best champion for this is Aatrox. I just haven't seen more of it, you know, more of his champions and more of his playstyles for this season.
Who would you pick, Veteran? Who would be the most overrated for you right now?
Right now, the most overrated for me would probably be... Actually, right now, who are the most overrated? Oh, Xerxes. Xerxes would be the most overrated player for me right now. And the most underrated player would probably be...
By your logic, NateDOhDoubleG, since you think he's the shit and everyone else...
Shit, everyone keeps naming him.
It does seem like he never gets props.
If you'd given me this in December, underrated would have been Febiven 100% though, because I had to justify NateDOhDoubleG S tier way less than I had to justify putting Febiven A tier last year. Like Febiven, Odo, Soaz, I had an A tier last year. And
I actually genuinely think, by the way, that unironically, just because Deficio made the meme of NateDOhDoubleG being super good because he was just doing it to be funny, I actually think that did fuck NateDOhDoubleG, because now everyone thinks like it was a meme that he was ever good. It's no, the whole point of the meme was that he was exaggerating it a little bit, wasn't it? But there was truth to it. He was a very good player, obviously.
Also, because the times that you hear Year of the Duck now the most are when his team, fails to qualify, when they fail to beat the top team.
So, again, it's a meme that comes back to bite you. Yeah,
right. It just keeps getting reinforced in a negative way. So yeah, the problem with NateDOhDoubleG is that he hasn't had the split victory yet, but he's had multiple opportunities where you can point out to him that he's failing. Right, even though he's failing at a higher level than the vast majority of mid laners ever reach. But people obviously don't think about it that way. They just have the negative aspect reinforced in their head. I definitely wouldn't have put Forgiven in either of those. Who would you say is the most underrated now, or do you still think Nemesis is the most underrated Orome? I almost called you Oda.
I think Wonder is underrated right now.
Really?
Underrated.
In what way?
Because people think he's slacking off and he's playing badly and stuff like this, but I actually think Wonder is still the best player in the league.
I mean, I sort of agree with you. It's a point I've made on the show before, in as much as if you look at some of the picks he's doing, especially these support champions, it's not going to make you look like the best top laner because you're playing something that supports the rest of the team. Whereas I do think if you put him on a team where he had to just be the carry every game, I think he'd be the MVP of the league, fucking stomp everyone.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Wonder is actually really insane. I mean, I think his trading is not quite Alphari level. It's close though. And I think he is a lot more aggressive in lane. Like, Alphari is the type of guy that if you don't do anything in lane, he won't do anything in lane, but he will just passively out CS you because he CSs perfectly and knows when to take jungle camps and stuff like this. But Wonder is the guy that, okay, you don't want to do anything, I'll force you to do stuff. Like, he will force you to trade and he will force you to do mistakes in a winning matchup. So...
Like, put it this way, Veteran. If you took tomorrow Wonder and put him on Rogue instead of Finn, I think he would be the MVP of the entire league.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the team where he would just stomp him, mate.
I think the only time I've properly flamed Wonder this split, though, was just when he took Airy on the Sona top thing. Like, that's probably the only time where I think he definitely was, like, trolling in a pretty big way.
No, not Dark Harvest is a bit troll, yeah.
Yeah, it's massively troll. Like he also didn't even go carrot top. Like, it was so strange actually watching. It's like he had the idea of Sona in his head, but he hadn't done any research into how you're supposed to do Sona top. So it kind of blew my mind. But I know I was surprised to hear that because I didn't realize Wonder was actually getting significant levels of flame. I guess maybe when G2 were like losing and Perks was very obviously a rock, and whereas Wonder like got solo killed by Mickey once after Mickey being solo killed twice by Perks, maybe I guess Reddit was giving him flame then. But I actually didn't. It genuinely passed me by that Wonder was getting flame. I don't know if you guys have flamed Wonder on like your other shows, Thorin, but
I don't think most people think he's the shit, mate. It's just like I said, he's not really like he's not in a position to be the MVP or whatever, is he? Because like he can't play fucking Sona and Soraka and be the MVP. I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen.
If there is, well, go on first. Go on first.
For example, in our game against them, in the post-match thread and on Twitter, people are flaming him. Like,
really
for dying to LeBlanc, for example. Well, I think, like, it's so easy to die as Aatrox against LeBlanc. You literally cannot do anything to her.
Yeah.
Like, I understand why he would die, But
Veteran, I think I know how to trigger you, mate. Here's one for you. Are you ready? Yeah. I think actually, if you are as fair as possible, based on coming into the split, you would have to say that B-Boy is actually underrated.
Oh, no, I don't have to say that.
He wasn't as bad as he looked before the split, mate. Like, everyone was flaming him so hard.
Dude, okay, so I don't care about the scrim arguments or anything like that. If you fucking watch the pro view of B-Boy, this guy does basic mechanical things wrong every fucking game. Like, really basic things wrong every fucking game. I reject that entirely. I thought you were going to say either Mickey was underrated or that Cajal was over.
I mean, for a similar reason, Mickey is underrated.
B-Boy, to my dying day, I'm definitely not underrating B-Boy. I actually think it's a joke that he's there, and I think a lot of the praise that he gets.
Right, I'm just going to have to draft in Kaiser to defend him now. So, Kaiser, why is B-Boy actually good?
Yeah, okay. That's cheating.
We found the synergy. There we go. That's how it works.
I mean, at the start, I have to admit, I was like, this guy is really bad. Like, when we started screaming Misfits at the start, like, they were really bad, and B-Boy as well. But I think the more the team clicked, like, I think B-Boy is actually like really good. Like when I see him play like Aphelios or something, like he completely 1v9s sometimes, and like I don't think he's like bad at all. Like I think he's like not like top tier level, right? Like I mean Reckless Kazi upset or something.
Put it this way, I wasn't meaning he was good by saying he's underrated. I just mean everyone made out like he was going to be the clear worst fucking ADC and he'd have no chance. Like he definitely not that bad.
Yeah.
And when you add in as well, the guy is Korean, trying to live in a fucking European team with translators. Like I don't think he's good, but I'm actually vaguely impressed that he's at all serviceable.
I mean, like I think he's like just getting better every game, kind of. Like at the start he had some rough games as well, but like I think I saw him like get towered off against like 4 people or something, and he like dodged everything. Like he survived as Aphelios, like that completely like won the game by itself or something. Like when I watched
you
that,
mean
like,
when they did a 3-man dive into his ultimate just straight up? Like, yeah, I remember that game.
I'm actually not sure anymore, but like that was like I was like really impressed by that, and like
I mean, there were moments in scrims where this happened, and then this made a meme. A meme was born in those moments, and that's B-Boy movement. And now whenever someone is like dodging everything or outplaying stuff, we're like, you have B-Boy movement.
Right. It's like Neo in the first Matrix movie when he dodges all those bullets. Yeah. Fair enough. Thing is though, Veteran,
Yeah.
Actually, the Mickey one's not a bad shout because his is a similar scenario. It's like he's not as bad as people made out, but the problem is it's just people want him to be bad, mate, because of all that stupid shit where he punched the wall or whatever. It's like people just want him to go 0-10 every game. He's not as bad as people make out. He's definitely not good like Featherman made out, where Featherman sees better than Larson. Like, Featherman's out of his mind on that. But I've noticed Featherman just has some very unusual opinions that only come from his brain.
I mean, I can only name 2 mid laners that I would potentially rate either on par or below Mickey. Like, Mickey has the Abadage problem, except he never has the Abadage Pro, where Abadage actually does get himself fed on literally only 2 champions possible. But there are champions where he can get himself fed straight up, so long as it's not like a radiant situation like you guys had, versus Mickey. But Mickey generally isn't able to actually get himself fed, like even on really cheesy champions like Pantheon, like the Pamp versus Vlad. Yeah, okay, your guy, you fucked up with that one ward and just fucked up everything. But like when he played Pantheon versus a human team in Rogue, then it was actually very, very difficult for him to play it out. Like he was getting stomped straight up. I don't like Genax is the other guy that I would put there because I feel bad that Sarkin is even here. Sarkin shouldn't really.
It's not his fault. Yeah, I don't blame him for that one.
I don't really blame him at all. Like, but other than them, it's very difficult for me to put a guy on Mickey's own. And in the same way, when I try to think of an AD carry I would rate below Bvoy, it's like, well, Inax only just arrived, and then who? Like Crown Shot? Like you yourself acknowledge that Crown Shot's actually pretty good, but they're getting very bad setups for him.
Yeah, like I think the thing is like you can't like it's really hard to rate AD carries like in a vacuum because like any player actually, like any player in a vacuum. So like players on bottom tier teams will always look bad, and you can't judge them from like their games at all. Or like I mean like sometimes of course like if you have like a really insane player, you will see it, right? Like you will see they dodge everything, something like that. But it's really hard to be able to do that, right? Like it's hard to like stand out. So because like everyone in the LEC is like really good, right? Like they're the top players. So there's like only so much you can like do basically, or like show off basically or something. So yeah, I mean it's kind of hard to rate the AD carries especially.
To be fair as well, Veteran, like I actually think AD carry is one of the best positions in all of LEC. Look how stacked it is. It's super deep.
But it's also really stacked outside, which is why the decision to grab Bvoy in the first place, like it just blows my mind. At least with the support,
that should have just been my boy Freeze, basically.
I don't use this to justify it whatsoever. I'll still flame Orgs for this particular thing, but like at least there was a time where support pool outside of the LEC was very, very bad.
Oh, of course, a few years ago for sure.
Yeah, so I can see why some owners would still be stuck in that mindset where the narrative is still stuck. With AD carry, there's no fucking excuse. There are multiple players. Like even if we go beyond,
that's a fair point.
Why isn't Jeskless still here? Like that makes no sense to me whatsoever. Inax was a guy who could be looking in, but there are players better than Inax. Like Xmati is a guy that everybody should be looking to as being one of the next AD carries to move up. Neon, sure, Neon had his ban and that kind of fucked him over a bit, but he's still a guy that they should at least look for. But instead, they fucking fired him. They weren't even going to use him on the main team in the first fucking place. Like it kind of blows my mind.
It does seem like he didn't get enough of a try. Like was it just because he fucking misbought once or something? Why is he just being banished to the Shadow Realm?
Well, him, Leader, and Heather did after having a really, really good run. Honestly, they beat Fnatic, they beat Splice, they beat a lot of top teams before their run ended, and then I don't know, they all got the fucking boot. But whatever. We can't all be Rogue. Like I'll always praise Rogue because Rogue didn't abandon any of the players that they put in a knowingly bad situation last year. Like it was a very tough ask to put them all on a fucking 2-12 team, right? It was a very tough ask to do that in the first place for the ones that they did.
I mean, they abandoned Woolite, but he also did deserve to.
They didn't abandon Woolite. No, that's the thing. They didn't abandon Woolite. Woolite is still there on the
I see what you mean.
team.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they still kept him on the Rogue AGO team. Yeah, they still kept him there. Like even the guys that they didn't start because, you know, no one is going to kid themselves and think Hans Sammer isn't a massive fucking upgrade over Woolite.
Oh, of course.
But they still didn't like abandon Woolite to the dogs or anything. Woolite couldn't find a position that was better than the Rogue one, so they allowed them to stay. Like Rogue are like the model of what a team should have done. Misfits went the other way. Heather Leader were dropped so late that they couldn't find teams. Neon, fair enough, got banned, but why wasn't he starting in the first fucking place? Like why were we looking elsewhere in the first place? And they are still like like the AD carries that I've named, and even AD carries beyond that are really good, even if they were kind of overshadowed by last year's comp versus Kazi definition of EU Masters like bot lanes. That was kind of like it for ages. But yeah, like with AD carry, it blows my mind that you would ever have to look outside there. And yeah, as a result, who do you really rate like below B-Boy? It gets very difficult outside of like really edge cases where like Inax, that's a very edge case, right? Crown Shot, we've discussed why he looks like poorer, whereas B-Boy doesn't have that excuse. It's fucking Denick and Razork. Those guys are beasting it, and his mid lane is just hard winning 24/7. Like, this guy's in one of the best positions possible, and it's still very difficult for me to say that Patrick is worse than him, that Kazi is worse than him, that Comp, who's in a much worse position than him, is worse than him. Like, all these AD carries, like I've already gone through most of the league at that point. Then you just have the elites. Like, it's very difficult for me to justify saying that like maybe I underrated B-Void. No, he's still the worst in my opinion.
What about your thoughts then? We'll make this one of the closing topics. Am I being too harsh saying that Nemesis is overrated?
Oh, my thoughts?
Yeah, Veteran. It sounded like you wanted to get into that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, on the Nemesis topic, I mean, he tried to play two champions they have to be a lot more aggressive on now this week, rather than just play around zones of control. Like the Lulu Zac game, there are multiple times where he...
Mate, I think his champion pool is fucking garbage right now.
Yeah, it is garbage, but there's like a meme that it isn't garbage because a certain guy will constantly say on stream, because I don't know, I guess he wants Nemesis to sleep with him or something, like it's really fucking weird. On the Yasuo game, he fucking goes back on a D-Blade buy and still manages to fuck up the second back that he goes on, even though he has item advantage over perks for the majority of the fucking laning phase. Like, it actually blows my mind some of the decisions that he makes, given where his strengths sort of supposedly lie. The moment that you take him off of his like zony, scaly champion pool, right? Like, I do think I think this guy is A tier, by the way.
He has skills, but yeah, he's not as good as even he thinks, I think.
The champions that he's good on, he's very fucking good on, but it betrays a tendency that prevents him from playing other kinds of champions to a max level. So for me, he's gonna have champ pool issues until he gets out of that comfort zone, that constant reinforcement that the way he's playing the game right now is really fucking good. And it is right now really fucking good. But there are going to be patches where, you know, he's going to fall off. Same with Huni. Fnatic typically has these really good players who are really good in one specific aspect, but you can tell it's going to be abused later on in the line. And Huni basically lost them at the semifinals back then.
Of course.
And everyone now pretends as if you could never have known Huni would be an issue in the way.
No. I even said at that time that is exactly what would happen. Is that because Huni literally, because we're talking about like the season 5 Huni now, not in the current deal, because he literally just ran over all the people in Europe, and even then he didn't. By the way, that was exaggerated. Like fucking Odoamne was great against him.
Yes,
Cabochard was pretty good against him. Like there was actually competition. They just won't carry tops in the same way, right? The problem is, I always said the second he runs into the elite Korean top laners, guess what? They're gonna fucking smash this guy because look how he plays. And what do you know? He went against Smeb and game over, son. The guy literally won both sides of the matchup. What do you want? Like, that's like styling on a level that's hilarious. But no, similarly for Nemesis, it's like one of the reasons I actually think he's overrated, aside from the fact he is because, as you just said, no one else says it. Like, you never hear people flame this guy. Mate, if my boy Froggen, who obviously himself is famous for being somewhat one-dimensional in certain ways, he isn't. He just plays to his strengths all the time. The difference is he gets flamed all day long because he's in a bad team. And Nemesis is allowed to just play fucking Ornn and shit like that and then be called one of the best mid laners in the world. Like, what the fuck? What mid laner in the world is best two champions are Diana and Ornn? Get the fuck out of the game. That's why I'd say on Twitter, like, yeah, at least he now understands he's one of the best support players in Europe.
In fairness, the chat pool you just described sounds like if Doinby began League in season 2.
Doinby is not one of the best mid laners and never has been. I've said that the whole time, exactly. That was why the real irony of Nemesis flaming him is like, you idiot, none of us thought he was actually a fucking sick mid laner, you moron. He's just a team captain and he's like, hi.
Yeah. Like, I think Nemesis is way better in lane than Doinby ever was.
Oh, of course he is. He's got mechanics.
But Doinby, like this is the thing, like that kind of objective way to play the lane out doesn't necessarily work out as being the best way within the game that you're in, within the 5v5 that you're in, if the way that you play out stylistically beats the way the enemy plays out stylistically. And most matches come down to these stylistic matchups. That's why when it came to BO5, all of the people who were predicting the stuff like G2 rolling over the Korean teams and stuff became completely correct, even if in the best of one scenario, it didn't go that way. But stylistically, they were always better than them. So they'll drop a game, then they'll smash the next 3. Yeah, brilliant.
By the way, I'm also totally with you that I actually do think Nemesis has the skills to be one of the absolute best. It's just the way he conceives the game is nowhere near, I think, matching what his skill set should be.
If you merge him and Leader, you have like a perfect mid laner. I'm not gonna lie. If you merge like him,
what sort of abomination fucking experiment is this? It's just like when they made the Powerpuff Girls and they were putting all those ingredients in the fucking. It's like a splice of Leader, not too much, and then a nice little bit of Nemesis in there.
True, actually. I think Larson right now is like still for me, even though Featherman hates him, is the mid that was closest to just rising up to S tier. Given that Humanoid had the worst first few weeks, I rated Humanoid above everyone last year, but right now I think Larson's the one that's kind of on the best track. Like you guys are saying, you didn't even think he would do the fucking Roman level 3. Well, there you go, he's developed into that. Whereas we're still yet to see the Humanoid that we saw so consistently last split. Right? It's not like he's gone from where he was last split and kept improving because he had other responsibilities. But I'm hopeful that in summer we see the Humanoid that we always saw because he was a top 3 mid last year for me, straight up. So.
And then I will also say as a final note, I also do go way harder on Nemesis than players of equal skill level because he's so cocky. It's like, if you also think you're this shit and then I'm watching the game and you're just getting fucking carried by all the other players, like, get the fuck out. Like, I'm never going to give people credit for that shit. It's like, just because the standings say you're there, man. Like, put it this way, pop Nemesis onto SK Gaming now and watch his team lose every fucking game. It'll be over.
Ooh, actually.
Enough said. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Dean Tanglis, Chi Mao, JDubs, NateDOhDoubleG, Peter the Feeder, Tobias Bernasconi, and a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Perhaps you want to ask me a question in my monthly Patreon AMA. Do you want teasers for who the guests are on my upcoming content? Maybe you want to take a part in the Patreon discussion with me each month. Well, if any of these perks tickle your fancy, then put your money where your mouth is by joining the Scrilluminati today in the Patreon link in the description box below.